Hey, what's going on guys, Tanmay here for Simple Snippets and welcome back to another video tutorial on AVL tree in the Data Structures and Algorithms playlist. And let's continue this topic of AVL tree. So in the previous video, we discussed what is a AVL tree and how it is more beneficial compared to binary search tree. In case if you've missed, that is the very important video. So please make sure you watch that first if you don't have any idea about AVL tree and what are the different rotations in AVL tree and how the balancing happens. And if you already know that, you're good to go. In this video, what we're going to see is we're going to see the balancing scenarios, that is the 4 different cases where the imbalances happen. But we are going to see it in the perspective of more than 3 number of nodes. So on the screen, you can see the summary of the previous tutorial where we have all the 4 different use cases. We have the left-left imbalance where we did the right rotation and got the balanced AVL tree. Then the case 2 where it was a right-right imbalance, it was imbalanced towards the right. So we did a left rotation and we got the AVL tree back. We did the balancing. The third use case was a left and right imbalance. So we had to do 2 rotations. We did the first rotation as left rotation. So N3 took the place of N2 and N2 took the place of N3. And then we got the left-left case. So that's why we did the right rotation and we got our balanced AVL tree. Similarly, for 4th use case, we have a right-left imbalance. So we did the right rotation first, then the left rotation, and we got our final AVL tree. So this is something that we've already seen in the previous tutorial. Hence, I have just directly shown you this one large screen where you can, take a screenshot of this in case if you are making any notes. You can use this, you can draw the diagrams. But today's topic is where we are dealing with more than 3 number of nodes, right? So how does the rotation look like when we have more than 3 nodes? How are these 4 different scenarios gonna look like in that situation? That is what we are gonna discuss in this tutorial. So now let's see those 4 different scenarios with more number of nodes, okay? Okay, so as you can see on the screen, we have those same scenarios, left-left imbalance, right-right imbalance. So this is case 1, this is case 2, this is case 3 where we have left-right imbalance, and then we have case 4 where we have right-left imbalance. Okay, but over here if you observe there are more than 3 nodes. So let's consider X, Y and Z as the 3 nodes, and clearly since this is a binary search tree, Z is greater than Y and Y is greater than X, correct? So just by looking at it, since Y is towards the left of Z, that is the left child of Z, it means that Y has to be smaller than Z, Z or Z depending upon where you live. And since X is the left child of Y, again X has to be smaller than Y, correct? So that's why this expression is true. Okay, so these are the 3 nodes, 1, 2 and 3. Consider them 3 nodes. We've named them alphabets, but you can take numbers also like 30, 20 and 10. But let's deal with alphabets over here. So what are these numbers then? What is T4? What is T1, T2, T3? So T1, T2, T3, T4 are subtrees. Okay, so T4 basically can be something like this. Okay, so T4 can be this also, where you have many more nodes below T4 at the place of T4. But we are considering only 3 of these nodes because when you're doing rotations, only 3 nodes are supposed to be rotated. Only 3 nodes are considered in the rotation scenario. So everything around that nodes, everything extra, since we have many more other parts also in a binary tree, in a binary search tree, when we are doing the balancing, in that case, everything else is considered as extra part over here. And that's why we have just given them placeholder names, alias names as T1, T2, T3 and T4. So we don't know how many number of nodes are there in T1. We don't know how many number of nodes extra are there over here and over here. So that's why we have simply named them T1, T2, T3 and T4. Okay. Now just by looking at this structure, you can say that this is a left-left case or left-left imbalance because it is going towards the left more. The reason why we are not calculating the balance factor over here is because we don't know how many number of nodes T1 has below. We don't know how many number of nodes T2 has. It might be only 1 node or it can be an entire subtree also, correct? So that's why we are not calculating the balance factor. We are simply assuming that this is imbalanced in the left-left case. Okay, alright. So when we get such kind of scenario, when we get a left-left imbalance, remember what we do? We do a right rotation. So in right rotation, what was happening? the center value y, so after doing the right rotation, the center value y becomes the new parent node, this z or z becomes the right child, and x becomes the left child. Okay, so this is something that we already know when you do a right rotation in the left case imbalance, correct? Alright, but now we also have to deal with T1, T2, T3, T4. And T1, T2, T3, T4 are nothing but subtrees, which means they can have further many nodes. So we are just assuming them as T1, T2, T3. We could have taken more nodes also. But just for simplicity purpose, we have named them T1, T2, T3, T4. So where do these different subtrees go? So this has to follow the same rule, or this has to follow the same structuring. That is, when after the rotation what we get is y, x and z, right? So these T1, T2, T3, T4 also should follow the same order. For example, T1 is the left child of x. So over here also T1 will be left child of x. So I'll write T1 over here as the left child of x. So T1 is done. Let me change the color. Okay. So T1 is done. What about T2? T2 is the right child of x. So T2 will be right child of x over here also, because we have nothing to the right of x, so we'll attach it over here. What about T3? Now T3 was to the right of y. But now after the right rotation, who's there to the right of y? It is z. So T3 will still have to be to the right of y. Okay. But since there already is z to the right of y, T3 will go below z. Now where will T3 fit below z? In the original structure, you can see z is over here at the top and y is to the left, which means y is smaller than z. Since T3 is to the right of y, so all the nodes in the T3 subtree are gonna be greater than y but are gonna be smaller than z. Correct? Let me repeat again. In the original structure, T3 is at this location, y is over here and z is over here. What does this mean? This means that z is greater than y because y is as the left child of z, which means y is smaller, right? You can see over here also y is smaller or less than z, but T3 is towards the right of y. So T3, that is all the nodes in T3 subtree, should be greater than y, right? Only then they can be to the right of y. So T3 will be to the right of y, but it will now be attached as the left of z, because T3 is ultimately towards the left of z only. Correct? Where is T3 in comparison to the z? It is towards the left only, right? Because to reach T3 we will go to left and then right. So ultimately all the nodes in T3 subtree are going to be smaller than z. So that's why T3 will come over here. And then one last node is left, that is T4. T4 was to the right of z. So we have space over here. So T4 will remain as it is, as the right child of z. That is right subtree of z. Okay, so you can see now after right rotation on this left case, we have got a proper balanced binary search tree. Just by looking at this structure, you can see that it is balanced. Of course, we don't know what do we have in T1, T2, T3, T4, but we are assuming that it is going to be balanced because these three nodes which were in the left imbalance have at least balanced perfectly. So now you can consider this as a AVL tree. Okay, so I hope the left imbalance case is now clear in terms of more than 3 nodes. So this is how it would look like. Y becomes the new root node, Z becomes the right child, X becomes the left child. X has T1 and T2 as their children. So T1 and T2 subtrees are going to be attached to X as it is. Problem is with T3. T3 was the right child of Y, so we have to go to the right. However, T3 is to the left of Z, so we have to go to the left. So T3 becomes the left subtree of Z, and T4 was the right subtree of Z, so that is as it is. And this is where you get a balanced binary search tree, hence it is a AVL tree. Okay? Alright, so this was the use case with left imbalance with more than 3 nodes, right? Because these are 3 nodes, but then we have multiple subtrees for these 3 nodes, correct? Okay, now let's see the right case. So in right case, we have again Z, Y and X. So again, Z is smaller than Y, Y is smaller than X. Why so? Because if you see, this is the root node, correct? y is to the right of z, which means y has to be greater than z, since ultimately this is a binary search tree only, just that it is imbalanced. X is at the right child of y, hence x is supposed to be greater than y, because in a binary search tree, the right child is always greater than the parent node, correct? Remaining T1, T2, T3, T4 are nothing but subtrees. So clearly you can see that for these three nodes, z, y and x, we are getting a right-right imbalance case. So in that case, what do? You do a left rotation. So a left rotation will be done. Now in left rotation, what do? You take z downwards. So over here the right rotation is done on z because z is supposed to be taken to the right downwards and y is pulled up, correct? So right on z, remember this. In the right case, a left rotation is done on the root node z. It is taken to the left and y is taken to the top as the parent. So now it becomes the new root node. So arranging these values, y will come to the top now, z will become the left child, and this x will also go up as the right child of y, correct? So this is how the left rotation will work on these three nodes. Now after doing the rotation on these three nodes, we have to deal with T1, T2, T3, T4. So let's talk about T1. So T1 is the left subtree of z. Do we have anything to the left of z? No. So T1 will be as it is, as the left subtree of z. Simple, T1 is done. What about T2? T2 was to the left of y, but now after the rotation to the left of y we have z. So T2 will also be to the left of y only, because we have to preserve this orientation. So we will go to the left of y, but T2 you can see in reference with z is to the right of z, correct? Because to reach to T2 from z in the original structure, we have to go one step to the right and then to the left, which means that T2 is ultimately greater than z. That is, all the nodes in the T2 subtree will be greater than z, and hence T2 will come to the right of z. So let me repeat again. Where is subtree T2 in reference with z? It is to the right of z, because to reach to T2 subtree from z, that is from the root node, we have to go to the right and we reach y and then you go to left. So technically T2 is still towards the right of z, right? So that's why that means that all the nodes in the T2 subtree are gonna be greater than z. They're gonna be smaller than y, and that is the reason why we have to go to the left first, because they're smaller than y but they are greater than z. So that's why then we go to the right of z. Okay, so you can see now the binary search tree properties are also maintained properly, because that is the biggest principle in binary search tree, that for a particular node the left child is smaller than that node, the right child is greater than that node. So T2 is done. What about T3? T3 was the left subtree of x. So for x, the left subtree is going to be T3 as it is. T4 was the right subtree of x. So that is also going to be as it is. And now you can see that we have balanced this right imbalance situation for node z, y and x. So this can be considered as a balanced binary search tree or AVL tree. Of course, as I mentioned, we are assuming that T1, T2, T3 are having nodes in such a way that they are also balanced over here. But they can have n number of nodes and you might require more rotations further. But right now the assumption is such that now we've done the proper balancing. So this is just an example to understand what happens when there are more number of nodes and how the balancing will work, how these 4 use cases will apply to a binary search tree which has more than 3 nodes. Okay. Alright, so now let's see the left-right use case, left-right imbalance, which is a little complicated because remember we have to do 2 rotations. So over here we have this tree, we have z as the root node, then we have y and then we have x. So just by looking at this binary search tree, we can say that this is a left and right imbalance, and z is greater than y because y is towards the left and y is smaller than x, correct? Because x is towards the right side of y. So in other words, you can also say x is greater than y because x is towards the right of y, but y is smaller than z because y is towards the left of z, that is left child of z. Okay, so 2 ways to put it. And in this scenario, what we do a first left rotation. So let's do left rotation, but this time the left rotation is not done on z directly. The left rotation is done on y. So the left rotation is going to be done on this node y. And when you do left rotation, what do? You take y to the bottom and you bring x to the top. So that's how left rotation works. So basically you're doing a swapping. So after swapping, z will remain as it is on the top, x will come over here, and since y is smaller than x, you can see in the original structure, x is towards the right of y, which means x is going to be greater than y. So when you swap them, y has to come to the left of x, right? Because y is smaller than x. If x is greater than y, it would mean that y is smaller than x, right? Makes sense? So after swapping, or after the first left rotation, we get this structure. Alright. So after this, what about T1, T2, T3, T4? These are nothing but again subtrees. So for T4, it is fairly easy. It is towards the right of Z. So that is unchanged. So T4 will come over here. Okay. What about T1? T1 was towards the left of Y. Do we have anything to the left of Y? Nothing. So T1 will be coming over here. Again, pretty basic. So T4 and T1 is done. So what about T2? T2 was towards the left of X. But now after the left rotation, towards the left of X, we have Y. So we will go to the left of X only first. But now we will see, since T2 was towards the right of Y. So to reach T2 in the original structure, from Y, we have to go to the right first. Correct? And then we have to go to the left first. So T2, that is all the nodes in the T2 subtree, are smaller than X because they are towards the left of X. But they are towards the right of Y. So they are greater than Y. So that's why they become the right subtree. So T2 will come over here as the right subtree of Y. And lastly, we have T3, which is towards the right of X. Do we have anything to the right of X? No. So T3 will come over here directly as the right subtree of X. Okay. So after one full left rotation on Y, we did rotation on this node Y and not Z. We have got this left-left imbalance case. You can see this structure is similar to this structure. So now the next rotation that we have to do is a right rotation. Correct? Because it requires two rotations to balance this complicated structure. So now we will do a right rotation, and this time the right rotation will be on Z. Okay? So when you do a right rotation, what do? You pull Z down and you bring X up. And you bring Y also up. So X will be the new root node. So let me write X over here. Z will become the right child of X and Y will become the left child of X. So this is something that happens when you do the right rotation on this left-left imbalance use case. Correct? That is what we saw over here also. And now what about T1, T2, T3, T4? So T1 is fairly easy. It is the left child of Y. So T1 will come over here as the subtree, left subtree of Y. T2 is also fairly simple. It is the right subtree of Y. What about T3? T3 was towards the right of X. So in the rotated structure also, we have to go to the right of X, but towards the right of X, we have Z. Now T3, that is all nodes in the T3 subtree, are towards the left of Z. So we will go to the left of Z, and this is where T3 will be now located. And lastly, T4 is nothing but the right subtree of Z. So T4 will come over here. And now this structure is balanced and we can consider it as a AVL tree. So this was the left-right imbalance where we did the left and right rotation on an imbalanced or unbalanced binary search tree which had more than 3 nodes. Okay. So whenever rotation is involved, we involve 3 nodes. But what about the other nodes? If in case it has more than 3 nodes, the other nodes also have to be placed in accordance to their original placing. When I say that, it means that if T2 was towards the left of X in the rotated structure also, T2 has to be somewhere towards the left of X only. Correct? So T2 is over here as the left of X. T2 is over here now, but it is still towards the left of X. Correct? So the original relation of left and right has to maintain, just that the positioning will change depending upon the rotation. Alright, so this was third use case. Let's quickly see the fourth use case. I'm guessing you guys can do it on your own also. So for the fourth use case, it is a right-left imbalance between Z, Y and X. So Z is smaller than Y because Y is towards the right of Z, and if this Y node is towards the right of Z, it means that it is a larger value. But X is towards the left of Y. So that means y is greater than x, correct? Because x is towards the left of y, it means that x is smaller than y, which means y is smaller than x, right? You can put it anyways, but that relation is going to be there because ultimately this is a binary search tree and it has to follow that principle where for every node, the left child is smaller, the right child is greater, correct? Okay, so in this case, this is a typical case of right left imbalance, and again we have to do two rotations. First rotation is going to be right rotation, and the right rotation first is going to be done on y node. So right rotation means we have to take y towards the right and x will be swapped with y, correct? So when you do that, this is how the nodes would look like. Z will be there on the top, x will be swapped over here at the position of y because x is still greater than z, right? Because it is towards the right only. But now y will become the right child of x. Why so? Because y is greater than x. You can see we just derived that. Y is greater than x, and in a binary search tree, if y has to be the child of x, it will come to the right because y is greater than x, right? Okay. Don't get confused, it is pretty easy. Just understand this relation. And after first right rotation, this is what we get. But what about T1, T2, T3, T4 subtrees? So let's arrange them also. So for y, we have right child as T4. So T4 will remain as the right child of y. So T4 is done. What about T1? T1 was the left child of z. So T1 will be over here as it is, as the left child of z. So what about T2? T2 was towards the left of x. So in this new rotated structure also, T2 will be towards the left of x, correct? As it is. So we are left with T3. So T3 was towards the right of x. So we'll go to the right of x from x. But in this rotated structure towards the right of x, now we have y. So y is greater than x. But in the original structure, if you observe, T3 is towards the left of y, correct? In relation with y, T3 is towards the left. That is, to reach to T3 subtree, we'll have to go to the left first, which means that T3 also will come to the left of y only. So T3 will come over here. Okay? Alright. Now once you do the first right rotation and looking at this structure, we can clearly say that this structure has now become something like this. Correct? This is how the structure looks like. A right-right imbalance. This is also a right-right imbalance. So now we will have to do a left rotation. But this time the left rotation has to be done on the root node Z. Okay? So now when we do a left rotation, we will do it on the root node Z. So in left rotation, when you do it on root node Z, Z comes down. X becomes the new root node. So let's write x over here. Z becomes the left child because z is pulled down towards the left. X goes to the top and y also goes to the top as the right child of x. So we have x, z and y. Alright. So doing the left rotation, we get this structure, but what about T1, T2, T3, T4? So T1 was towards the left of z, correct? So over here also it will be towards the left of z. So T1 will be over here. What about T2? T2 was towards the left of x. So we will go to the left of x. But there we have z now. So we cannot place T2 over here. So we'll see in the original tree, T2 is towards the right of z. Right? In relation with z, T2 is towards the right of z. So in the newly rotated structure also, T2 will be towards the right of z. If you observe for y, we have the left subtree as T3. So T3 will be left subtree over here also. And T4 was the right subtree of y. So over here it will remain the same. And this, my friends, is again a balanced binary search tree, also termed as AVL tree. So this was the last use case, that is right-left imbalance, right-left case, where we had to do right rotation first, then left rotation to ultimately get the balanced binary search tree or AVL tree. Okay, so these were the 4 use cases with the 4 different imbalances and the different rotations, just like we saw in the previous tutorial, but that was for the 3 nodes, which was very simple. In this case, we did the same 4 rotations, but with binary search trees which had more than 3 nodes, and this is where the scenario gets a little tricky. I hope you've got how you can do the rotations depending upon the different use cases. In the further video, we will solve a real world example where we will create a AVL tree using an insert sequence. So you'll be given a sequence of numbers and you have to form the AVL tree. So in between, whenever you're forming the AVL tree, there will come times when you'll have to rebalance it because the tree will become imbalanced, and that is the time when we will do the rotations. Okay, so I'm gonna wrap up this video over here. I hope you've understood the different rotations in AVL tree when it comes to more than 3 nodes. All the 4 use cases have been covered. If you understood this video, please give it a like. It took a lot of time and effort to make this video. Definitely comment and let me know your views. Do share it with your friends. This is very important when it comes to solving numericals based on AVL tree. And subscribe and turn on the notifications if you haven't done it already. Join the family and you'll get notified whenever I upload such tech educational videos in future. So thanks for watching. See you in the next one. Peace.